Now, Martha, I want to start with you. From 10,000 feet up, what is the cause of these trade disruptions?
It's actually a perfect storm between any number of trade and commercial issues, starting potentially or probably with the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact that it had, particularly on manufacturing at the outset of the pandemic in China, and the ripple effects that that caused on the supply chain environment across the world. If we use an example of a particular good that has been meaningfully impacted by the supply chain and how that good itself has sort of reverberated down the chain, we can use the supply chain shortage of semiconductors or microchips as an example. According to Acer, for example, one of the world's largest laptop manufacturers, companies are still going to be impacted by this shortage until at least the first half of 2022. And semiconductors are an essential part of electronic devices found in everything from cars to factory machinery to dishwashers and mobile phones. And when we all started working from home, when children started doing online learning, the crunch in that particular product became more dramatic because we required additional technology in order to continue the economic streams in our societies. We also look at some strain on the ports, some container shortage issues, and general economic downturn that was initially caused by COVID. So this is all a perfect storm that has caused this supply chain crunch.
Yeah, George, is there anything you want to add to that about what is feeding this? Because I think there have been some comments from some political leaders saying, this is really about people ordering too much stuff on Amazon. And as Martha said, obviously there's a lot more to it than that. So what are some of the things that you view as fueling this shortage?
Well, I think it's correct in part to say increased demand due to the pandemic is driving a lot of the issues that we're seeing today. But you're absolutely right that there's other factors that we need to take into account. And I'll give two examples. I think the first and most important one is labor, right? We have industries, logistics, transportation, warehousing, where you have all these workers who are now, working increased hours, risking exposure to COVID, especially in the early days of the pandemic, to, get the goods where they needed to go. And, while that might be receding to a certain extent, there's still general labor shortages out there. Manufacturers have a hard time filling slots. And I think the other thing we need to point out is that the strain and the stretches on the supply chains have made them susceptible to other shocks. So the best examples being extreme weather events. I mean, look at the flooding in BC right now. Rail lines in the port, they're going to be out for at least days. There were the wildfires in BC earlier in the year that caused issues. And the winter storm in Texas, right? That knocked out supply of critical foam that goes into upholstered furniture, right? There was also resin production impacted, which goes into plastics to make cars. So we talk about the perfect storm. In some cases, it's literally a storm.
Martha, just briefly, we've got a minute left in this segment. Your comments on how COVID has fueled any of these shortages. In particular, I think there was a port shutdown in Asia because of a COVID outbreak there.
Right. So port processes have been dramatically impacted by COVID. Where we have a port that has labor shortages or labor reductions because of exposure to COVID, in many instances, the port management has not been able to substitute staffing quickly enough. And there have been actual port shutdowns, as you mentioned, Christine, resulting from the COVID contraction or COVID exposure. We have similar additional stressors on ports because of the container shortage and because of related regulatory issues that are straining the to and from and transportation internationally.
We've got to go to break, Martha, but we'll continue this when we're back.